Hey, welcome to We Had Movies, and I'm your host, Mohammed Yegi, and you have your other host.
Eric Leon.
Woo! Oh yeah, I
Ooh,
said my full name this time, Mohammed Yegi. I guess I
that's
might as
okay.
well just tell people that yeah,
Just just
Mo is
just
short
roll
for
just
Mohammed.
right.
Yeah,
Just roll with it.
yeah, because I mean I don't want people to be confused and think that my name is short for Morris or
Morris.
something weird like that. Yeah,
Momar.
no, there's lots of Mohammeds in the world for sure. So I'm not the only one. So I like to be Mo. Mo is good, and Mo Yagi. It's more
Mo
specific.
it's
There's not a
it's
lot of Mo Yagis, so that
no,
works out that way.
exactly.
Yeah, works out
Exactly.
that way. But yeah. So today, we're talking about a holiday movie because we thought, it's the holidays. So before we get into other films, let's do a holiday film. And I didn't want to do something too obvious. I mean, we could have done Home Alone, but I think we wanted to go with something a little more obscure. So I decided to pick something that was really obscure. and we decided to go with Trapped in Paradise, which was a 1994 film with three, I mean, commonly known actors, but like weirdly enough, had no chemistry together. Dana Carvey, John Lovitz, and Nicholas
The
Cage.
irreverent Nick Cage. Yeah.
Nicholas Cage, yes, and I mean, I wanted to talk about Nick Cage at some point, and this probably isn't the first best movie to introduce him in, but like,
No. But
but it was
there's lots of
obviously it was really Nick Cage acting. Like it was just like a lot of good, obvious Nicholas Cage
listen,
acting.
no matter what Nick Cage movie you watch, and this is something true about him, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
hear about it in interviews, you'll hear about it everywhere. He does not phone in any performance. It could be the shittiest movie you've seen, but you will get a top-notch Nick Cage performance out of that
I
movie.
think
It could
I
be a
think that's
steaming pile
the
of crap, but the best
yeah.
thing about that movie will always be Nick Cage.
Well, I think that's something to be said about this film. I mean, before we get into this, the summary, I mean, it is. I think the strongest point of this film was the acting, like the not the acting so much as like the
The casting
the
choices, yeah,
performances. Yes, like the choices of certain people were well done, and also some of the actors in it are like the B actors, the background actors are actually more, to me, did a lot better job than the actual main characters. And
for sure.
so it does have like a sort of familiarity, almost like I've seen a film like this before. It's almost like a Hallmark movie, kind of. It's very kind in its way, even though it's got like gangsters in it and whatever. But it's very soft and very like gentle for a holiday
I
film.
I I would definitely agree. It does feel like a movie that I've already watched like half a dozen times, and it
Mhm.
maybe that's part of why like during while I was watching this movie, it felt like I think I've seen this movie like half a dozen times before. I'm sure I've seen this. I'm sure I saw this movie, when I was young.
Right,
But since then, there's so many other movies that have come out that follow kind of like the same formula,
right,
right? A
and
lot of the same themes and tropes that you see in that you've seen in the what is it, 30 years now since then?
yeah, and I mean
Yeah,
it's
the
a
30 the,
Christmas
the 30
movie.
years
Yeah,
since that movie came out, right? So
yeah, and I mean the reason why, by the way, the title is it's Trapped in Paradise because they are basically trapped in a small town called Paradise, and it's not.
Paradise, exactly.
It's almost even got a Groundhog Day feeling because even though the day doesn't keep repeating itself, it's almost like everywhere they go, they always end up back in paradise. So like,
I
it,
think it's that small town, like it's just
yeah,
the kindness of small towns, and kind of
yes,
it throws off the big city people, right? So it
right,
almost it almost feels like Groundhog Day because you see it everywhere, right? So
right,
it's like it's repeating itself even though it's not, right? But
right,
it's because the
exactly.
people are exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Wherever you go, you're going to meet them, the same people. Everybody knows each other. It's very much that sort of small town. So Paradise,
That actually does
Pennsylvania.
play a pretty big role in the
Yeah.
outcome of how this movie kind of turns out.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about so let's summarize the film. So basically you have these three brothers. So basically the one brother you get an idea, played by Nicolas Cage, Bob. Of course they name him Bob.
Of course.
Yeah. What a simple name. And Bob is just a simple guy who just wants to work, make a living. He doesn't want to be trapped in the same routine that his brothers got trapped into, where they keep going in and out of
Mhm.
jail. And he wants to make a living, and he becomes a restaurant manager, and he does well for himself and well enough to take care of himself and his mom. So he still lives with his mom. However, he does seem to own a really ratty car at the beginning of this film, where he goes to pick
He
up his
does.
brothers
Yeah.
from the jail, and the car is just like ridiculously ratty. I mean, nowadays you'll never see a car like this on the road. Even legally, probably you wouldn't see anything like this on the road.
No,
but
exactly.
but for some reason, I mean, it's the same car that they use in Trailer Park Boys. Basically, it's like that kind of ratty. Yeah, so it's really, really like ratty car, and he doesn't have a lot of money. He just has enough to get by in New York City, obviously. Being a big city, I mean, yeah, I could see how things would cost a lot more. Rent, the expensive living is higher, that sort of thing. Now, his brothers, on the other hand, he has one brother who is supposed to be kind of more like, I guess, the kind of ringleader, and that would be played by John Lovitz, and that's what did they name him? Dave. So Dave is the John Lovitz character, and so Dave, he seems to be more of the liar in the situation, and he's more
Very
willing
much so. He's
to
he's the big liar.
to bend the truth, to get things done, to get things like going the way he wants,
Hmm.
and he's definitely more greedy than the other two. And then you have Alvin, played by Dana Carvey, who's it's really odd the way they brought him in, because I feel like the direction was, please play the role of like the youngest brother and make him like as New Yorker as possible. And Dana Carvey came out with like, "Hi, my name is Alvin."
Oh
like,
my
like,
god! You
like
think
the
he's playing
voice.
Alvin and the Chipmunks,
Yeah,
man? Like
Alvin the
holy
Chipmunks. I
shit!
think that's what he heard when he heard Alvin, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm playing Alvin and the Chipmunks as a New
Yeah,
Yorker."
it's funny you
And
say that because I was thinking, how would I best describe the voice that he's doing? First of all, like, he does a voice in this, which I feel like is completely unnecessary. Like,
unnecessary. Yeah.
just be Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey is successful as just Dana Carvey, especially at that time, right?
I
Like he was just
mean,
coming off his
not
success from
really. I mean,
SNL.
Garth was a character too. Don't forget that Garth was his biggest character, and he was not.
True.
I don't think Dana
But that's
Carvey
a
is
character
one
from
particular
SNL, so it's a
person.
little bit different, you know. Like if you look at some of
Yeah,
his other movies that are like non, character based that he did, like he can be
he's
funny without
capable.
doing an
Yeah, he's
obnoxious
capable.
voice, which
He's definitely capable, but I feel like he needed to do that at that moment to really shock. Because I could see like John Lovitz almost like break out in laughter the moment hears him speak. The first second he comes out with his voice, like, "Hi, I'm Alvin," it just like everybody's trying not to laugh, because I think that was his purpose. He was trying to make the room happy. And I think what happened is it ended up not playing out. I mean, it went with the film in a sense, because he kind of kept doing it, so he stuck with it, which is good. Like, he didn't ever change out of that character,
mhm.
but it was just, I don't know. It was a weird choice. It was a weird choice. Let's just say that. And I mean, I guess again, you understand that he's the younger of the brothers from New York, and so he did a good job. It's just, again, it's Dana Carvey, and when you tell him do this character, he's gonna go crazy with it, right? And I had a feeling that that was gonna be the
That was going to be
situation in
it.
this. Yeah, I mean, it would have been a more popular film if Dana Carvey had played a much more interesting role other than a pickpocket. But like,
No,
anyway,
no,
that
no.
was
He
that
wasn't
was
just a pickpocket. This guy was a full-on like
yeah,
kleptomaniac. Like he
kleptomaniac. Yeah,
was. I have
they
never
say it in
seen
the beginning
someone
of the film. Yeah, he's a
steal so
kleptomaniac.
much shit in a movie that as this guy. This guy would steal everything and like
Everything
any
in sight.
anything and everything. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, anything that you could think that is missing, it's probably in his pocket. And they point it out several times in the film, so it's really good. As far as a kleptomaniac character goes, now when they're what these three brothers end up doing is the oldest brother, or not the oldest brother, but the second oldest brother, Dave. I guess Dave is supposed to be the same. I'm not sure because John Lovitz looks much older than Nicolas Cage. But anyway, John Lovitz looks much older in every single film he's ever
Everything. Yep.
done. But um, and the other interesting thing is that they made Nicolas Cage the straight man, so that as in the sense that he's supposed to be the one that doesn't make the jokes. He's supposed to be the one that kind of is sensible and whatever. But
He's the grounded one.
he's the grounded one, but almost like it's not like there wasn't a straight man. Like they all kind of went crazy at some point. Like Nicolas Cage even started doing voices at some point, and he does this thing where he's like, "I'm getting louder," like I'm Nicolas Cage,
Well,
and
that's the
so
classic Nicolas Cage freak out right there, right?
right, yeah. So he does that so much, and so to gets to a point where he's like, I'm not sure which one is the straight man anymore. So it's almost like, oh, whoops, John Lovitz is now
Well, there was a
the
moment
normal guy. Like what? That's
there
weird.
was a moment in the movie where when it's in the movie they're in the bank for the first time, and it's like
Yeah,
a switch flipped in Nick Cage's character, where he's just all of a sudden he was all in on the plan, right?
yeah, yeah.
At first he wasn't remotely interested in what they had cooked up, but then afterwards
But
he
then
was
he saw
all
the
in.
money. Yeah, he saw the
And he
money.
saw how easy it was, right? I
Right,
think that's what did it for him. It was how easy, like the cameras were disconnected, like
right.
it was a walk in the park for them. And
Yeah.
it
So
kind of was.
you have these three brothers. They go into this test. The one brother gives this story, the spiel about some guy in jail that he met, who's turns out later on we find out he was a gangster leader, gang leader, a mafioso kind of type leader. We'll just call him a gang leader because we don't really know if he was in the mafia or not. The idea is that they're Italian, they're New Yorker. Those are the evident things, and he
Mhm.
basically takes this guy's story that he's probably been telling for years in jail about this bank that's really easy to rob. And then he goes and tries to convince his brothers to go rob this bank because, hey, this is an easy score. We can get this money and then we never have to rob again. And
Right?
so he lies to his brothers in a way because he convinces them by telling them this whole sob story that this guy hasn't seen his daughter and he's really looking for his daughter that works at this bank. But really, it turns out that's not the case. And they he just get he
Damn.
can he convinces Bob by showing him like, oh, look how easy it is, look at how much. He's like, oh, there's no money here at one point, and then all it turns out, oh, look, they're bringing money in. And at the time they didn't know what that money was, and then later on they bump into the nice folks because they get tripped up quite a bit. One time they fall into, okay, the what are the couple trip ups? They trip up the first time because they rob the bank, but then the car breaks down, and
Yep.
then they shove it into the water to get rid of it. The old car is in the water. They have a getaway car. That car gets hit. That one breaks down, and then they end up back in town, and they end up somehow at the head of um the bank's uh the head of bank's house. Okay, and he just happens to have he being a welcoming person and lets them in, and it's a coincidence. It's all coincidence that they fall into the
Hmm.
house, that that this person happens to be and it's the same woman that they met in the diner. There's a whole funny thing that there's a couple of funny things that happen where it's like, oh, haha, like they have to go back and forth from the bank to the diner to get all the people from the diner to bring it back to the bank so that he can open up the safe.
Let's
And
see.
then
Yeah.
what they learn from this whole experience when they're at the dinner is that this money isn't just like, this is money that the town collects for to keep the bank
Christmas.
alive,
Yeah.
and that they kind of informally give loans to people without really without telling the big banks about it, and that's actually kind of illegal. But they're
It
doing it out of
is.
the kindness of their heart, and they're trying to make this, this town better. And now that this all happened, it's going to explode, and now they're not going to have this money every year, and the bank has to close down, and all these people might have to foreclose on their homes, and it's like a really crazy thing. So, again, small town mentality. Then it dawns on Bob that I've done a really bad thing, including the fact that he starts falling in love with, I guess he starts falling for this very beautiful actress slash model from the early 90s. And her name is Madchen. What was the actual actress's name? Madchen or Machen. Sorry, it's pronounced Machen. And I remember how the other part of the name is. Do you remember the last name?
I don't.
Let me just pull it up here. Yeah, Machen Amick. Yeah, Machen Amick is her name. I think it's supposed. I'm not sure what the origin is. I believe it might be Irish, like old Irish. You know what I mean? Like it's like Celtic.
Yeah, yeah.
But either way, she plays the role of Sarah Collins in this, and she turns out to also be the mob leader who was in jail, who gave the story about the bank. She happens to actually be his daughter, so that
The
wasn't
daughter. Yeah.
made up by Dave. And she turns out to be a very beautiful Italian woman in this movie. And by the way, I had a huge crush on her back in the day because she was also in Twin Peaks. So one of my and for anybody
Right.
out there who loves movies, they probably love Twin Peaks as well, because of the acting and all that. So she was the very helpless what would we say, like a waitress at the in the Twin Peaks diner. And she also plays later on in life. She actually played a couple of different roles, and she comes back in that show that they made about Archie and all that, the Riverdale show. So she ends up playing
Right.
a mom character in that too. And so she's been around quite a bit as an actress, but specifically, those are the bigger roles that I think that people would remember her from. And
Mm.
yeah, so you have this, not like, I don't know if Bob is supposed to be charming, because again, it's played by Nicolas Cage, and I don't find him particularly charming, but he is in a lot of love interest movies. So,
Yes.
and so in this particular case, I think you're supposed to believe that he's still this very charming, handsome man, and he's taken the eye of this girl as well. But she also understands that he's a thief, and she right away catches on that these people are there to rob the bank, and they've heard
Mm.
stories, they know about it through her dad or something connected that way. Either way, she just says, as soon as she finds out, she tells him, get out of town, just leave. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. You're pretty much ruining this town for me. And um and that's when kind of Bob starts to, change his mind, and he realizes he needs to do the right thing. And then eventually, and again, this is a long film, so that's why the summary is going on forever, because they go back and forth quite a bit, and it gets to the point where they go and then they drop the money off at the priest's door, and the local priest store, and then they give it to the church, and then in a way that will get back to the community, and so everything is
Mhm.
great. And they end up all arrested by the end of it. Of course, there's a subplot, a B plot, where you have the gang leader has kidnapped the mother of those three brothers
The three brothers. Yeah.
with another guy, and they escaped out of jail somehow. They knew about the robbery. They escaped out of jail somehow. They had it ready just for that moment, and kidnapped the mom, brought her down to paradise to sort things out and get the money that they think they deserve, because he had plans to rob that bank to begin with. And so what happens is everybody gets caught up at the house of the owner of the owner of the bank, and they get all everything happens. They all get arrested, and then back at the police station, the federal agent, who's also played by a pretty popular actor.
Richard Jenkins.
Yeah, I forget his name now. Richard. Yeah, you said. Oh, sorry, you said it. Richard Jenkins. Yeah, and he does a pretty good job there, Agent Shadis, I guess, or he's supposed to be also kind of
Hmm.
Irish-ish. And then I'm not sure who Vic Manny is, but he plays Vic Mizuchi, who's the boss. And anyway, so they end up, of course, arresting the guys who escaped from jail and put them back to jail. And then the town defends the three brothers because they did the right thing. And even though now at this point the owner of the bank caught on and he knows that they actually were guilty of robbing the bank to begin with, the and as well as the wife and the son, and but because they did such a great job at defending their mom, and that they showed kindness, and then they returned the money, they decided in turn to return kindness because it's Christmas, and let them go, and basically told the federal agent they weren't involved, and these three brothers get away scot free.
Hmm.
So, and then of course you get the nice little, like, Bob goes back to Sarah, and then they kiss, and then Bob decides, you know what, I'm not going to leave this small town. I'm going to stay with Sarah here and raise a
I'm gonna
family.
stay here. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to raise a family. I mean, I might as well open up a restaurant here and manage a restaurant here since I'm not doing that great in New York anyway, right? So,
Pretty
and
much,
somehow,
yeah.
yeah. So basically, that's what goes down. And yeah, it's. I mean, it is like a light, heartwarming story. But there is a lot to be said about the back and forth, and just how long it was. I mean, as far as a holiday film, I didn't expect it to be that long. I feel like they could have cut back quite a bit, and they could have had a stronger appeal in like the future. Like again, like if you think about Home Alone, although the movie you remember it as being a longer film, it's not quite that long, right? Like it's
No, exactly.
and I think it's because again they did a good job of explaining the everything that needs to be explained, and then focusing on like the robbers and the kid, and those are the really main plots. And I think they tried to do that with this film, but again, a couple of things like we talked mentioned before. You had like Nicolas Cage, who is supposed to be like the normal brother, but he isn't normal because it's Nicolas Cage and he's never normal. So I was expecting him to be a little more explosive, and
Mhm.
so there was that, and then there was also Dana Carvey playing a ridiculous role, and such an outrageous voice that it was almost annoying. And John Lovitz is John Lovitz. And I don't know, like, is there a reason why John Lovitz kept getting roles in films? Because I think my favorite roles for him would have been like Wedding Singer or something like that, just because he's really good at being the villain. I think he would have been better. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it's just he's better at being the villain, but not like a villain um like super evil, but more
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a
No, I know what you mean.
clumsy villain, right? Like a villain, but like
Hmm.
he's got evil intentions, but he's kind of goofy in his own way. And I think that's where John Lovitz does it best. And I think that's where I remember him being the best parts of. So in this movie, it was kind of hard. Like he did do a good job of being that character, of being Dave, as far as what again, why they're all named Bob, Dave, and Alvin, and then the last name Furbo, right? And their mom is like super Italian. It's like
Right?
it was a really weird mixture of culture there. I'm not sure. Did you look into the background of the last name Furbo? I was curious to know if like
Was it?
Furbo.
No, I didn't come up with anything there, but I think a big problem for me of this movie was like a bit of the pacing. It felt really uneven. And in a little bit of the research that I did for this movie,
Mm-hmm.
I came across some comments made specifically by John Lovitz where he basically said, well, first of all, one of the big things was that apparently the entire cast hated working on this movie,
Okay.
and they actually took to calling the movie Paradise and Bullshit.
Paradise of Bullshit. Okay.
Yep, Paradise and Bullshit. And apparently, the director, who's George Gallo, he didn't like he actually didn't direct at all on this movie, even though he's listed as a director. It's quoted, John Lovitz is quoted as saying that he didn't actually direct much, and in fact, one point, Nick Cage took it upon himself to direct certain parts of the movie because the director wasn't directing anybody. He basically just told them to do whatever they wanted.
And I
So,
see, I could see that happening because I think the director was, he wasn't popular for, he's very popular for directing B films.
well, that's
Um,
just it. He directed Midnight Run. Like that was his
mhm,
first movie, the Robert De Niro movie.
right.
Um, so I mean, you kind of go from something like that to something like this, which I mean, I don't know how that works, how you get a movie as a director, but it almost seems like a step down, you know? It seems like he didn't very much care, and that definitely came across in the movie. Um,
Yeah, because I think what would
because
have been an issue there is like you're talking about a guy who's like, okay, well, you want me to make like a gangster movie? And they're like, no, 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 we want you to make a fun, lighthearted
right,
movie with gangsters in it. And that's where I think I would have got lost as well as a director. Um, so maybe that wasn't just it was he wasn't the right pick, right, for that sort of film. And I could see how
absolutely,
Nicolas Cage would step in and just be like, "Well, I'm going to be the handsome guy here, and
right.
this is how I take over this scenario here." And yeah, I talk back to my brothers sometimes, occasionally, but most of the time I tolerate them. And like I could totally see that kind of coming out of Nicolas Cage, and and it's funny you say like again individually a lot of performances in this film were great. Like I liked the guy who played the bank manager. He was very nice.
Mhm.
The wife as well. The mom of the three brothers, I thought she was the funniest part of this whole film, to be
She was
honest.
the funniest part, absolutely.
And she was very much like stands her ground, doesn't take crap from anybody. She's like, yeah, what are you
Hmm.
gonna do, shoot me, like it's just like
Right.
she really was like my favorite character.
The way she was talking back to the gangsters when they had taken her was probably some of the funniest stuff I saw in the movie.
Yeah.
Um, which again, when you look at scenes like that, and then you go over to the three brothers doing their things, I feel again the tone is very inconsistent, especially the comedy that's being delivered. You've got half of it is slapstick comedy, and then the other half is gags or whatever, and it's yeah, it just feels very inconsistent.
Yeah, and I mean this. She's an actress that just kind of did a lot of TV acting back in the day, Florence
Mhm.
Stanley, and I thought, man, she's quite funny. Like, yeah, she isn't like I bet she would have been known for just being really really funny on the set as well. So yeah, I'd have to give credit for some of the performances. Some people did, like, even though this film wasn't going anywhere, they acted their butts off, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, and again, it's a Christmas film, so I mean, compared to what we can see now as Christmas or holiday films, I don't even think they mention Christmas anymore in holiday films, to be honest. So the fact that that was brought up, or that the small town celebrates it, or that they brought the money back to
Mhm.
the church, those sort of things are very, anything tied to religion is kind of like not in the films these days. And it makes sense why, because you want to reach a bigger audience. But at that time, it would have made sense to, and especially it gives you a setting of a place that doesn't really exist anymore. Like even small towns now don't, they're either down very much more downtrodden, or everybody's leaving, like nobody's staying,
For
or
sure, for sure.
or they're a little bit more modern, and you still have the places where you have like maybe all they have is one bar and one Tim Hortons, but um but like you're not going to see that sort of community anymore like you used to. So that's really interesting to have that, and I think that's where uh, in a way it was sort of redeeming of that film, is like seeing that sort of small town mentality versus the big city, and how important money is comparably if you're thinking about like thematically, like how important money is to a small town versus how important money is versus to a larger city, right? Like that amount of money
Agreed.
means nothing in New York, whereas that kind of money means everything. It means the world in a small town, right?
Well, and they
So
made that very clear, like when they were having dinner with, with the bank manager's family, when they took them in for Christmas dinner. They really made that. They really drove that point
mhm.
across. And yeah, I mean, I think there was kind of like I mean, again, because of the tone in the movie, it's hard to say whether there wasn't some actual. You do get the sense they kind of do uh drive across the point that the guys regret their decisions, but it's hard to see if there's any sincerity behind um any of that. And I don't know if
Yeah,
that's just the casting choices that they made. um I mean, you can
yeah,
definitely see it with Nick Cage, but I mean, I think that's just the quality of actor that he is. Where, like I said at the beginning, you can give him a piece of shit movie, and you'll still get a grade A performance out of him.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I mean, the other thing that's not, I mean,
I think
spoken.
also a big, I think also a big problem was that the dynamic between John Lovitz and Dana Carvey was, I think they tried to bring back the magic because the last time they worked together was on SNL, back in the day.
Right, right.
And I think their idea was, okay, let's bring back that magic, like what happened before. And I think that just it wasn't there because it's
No,
different
the
when you're
casting
doing
was like you
SNL,
said at the
right?
beginning, like the casting wasn't that great. Like for some roles, yes, but for the three brothers, it was the weirdest casting because
It was.
they had no chemistry. The none of them seemed like brothers to me. It didn't even matter that they didn't look the same. Like, yeah, brothers don't always look exactly the same, but they just had no chemistry. Like they didn't feel
If you
like
had said,
brothers.
yeah, if you had said that they were friends that grew up together since they were
Right.
small and then they went to high school together, like they've been friends for life, that would seem more believable, because
Yes.
there wasn't even like a brother dynamic
They could have even
with
done it
them.
where it's like the mom just raised them. Like she just raised those three, and
Exactly.
maybe she was a what do you call it? Like she adopted them, or like maybe she was you know something like that. Like just like she they were always around, and he was just like Bob was always getting them out of trouble, but they were always getting themselves into trouble, sort of thing. That would have been a more interesting way of explaining that dynamic, because you're right. Like they and what I was saying before, like they have no chemistry as far as brothers.
Hmm.
But you could, again, they tried really hard. I mean, like I could see Nick Cage be like, Dave. But like what, I guess. you know but like I don't know, he was yeah, it was what it was. That aside, I also felt, of course, like as far as like this film speaking to different audiences. I mean, for me, I can sit back and watch it and remember films from the 90s and assume, you know, it's a time where most people loved a mediocre white man on TV, right? So,
Hmm.
and so you had the whole community was just, it was white across the board. I mean, the one character that was probably the most dynamic or the most interesting would have been the brother that had like sort of like a developmental issue where he loved that horse so much, and he kind of like, and in the
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the and in the end he kind of is the hero, because he like he forgives them for not for stealing his horse, but he also like shoots the one guy in the leg, or I can't remember how it plays out, but yeah. So oh yeah, yeah, he does shoot the villain in the leg, I think.
At the end, yeah.
Yeah. So he ends up playing a good part, and um and showing you that he could still be a smart guy even though he's developmentally challenged. And so that was probably the most diversity that you were going to see in this film, if you were expecting any sort of diversity at all. I mean, again, it's supposed to be a small town in Pennsylvania back in the 90s. You weren't going to see people of different color there. So you weren't going to see a lot of people with from different backgrounds or different ethnic origin, much different than, they're supposed to be Italian versus like the rural, probably a lot of these folks are, background, either English, Irish, French, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the mix of culture wasn't there, but I mean, it's expected for a film of that time period in that sort of scenario in that place. So if you're
Exactly.
trying to see a film that with that sort of and keeping that in mind, I mean, that's not much different than what you'll see nowadays in Hallmark films anyway. Again, small town somewhere in America, you don't generally get to see a lot of diversity anyway, unless they occasionally give you that. I'm not sure. I haven't really watched anything recent, to be honest, on Hallmark films. But yeah, and that being said, like, so that wasn't there, but there was a lot of again. Uh, there was a lot of sense of community and a sense of home, like hospitality, and a sense of those sort of things come from small town. And I can tell you, relating myself, even though being Lebanese Canadian, or you being from background from South America, or Central America, sorry, Central America, and Mexico,
Hmm.
like you are aware that small towns are the same everywhere you go, and
For
so
sure.
that small town mentality is there, and it's very obvious. It's like this friendliness that you get from a community, and that everybody's there to look out for each other, but they're also there to welcome new people because they don't get to see new
Absolutely.
people every day, right? And so yeah, I think that it does give you that sort of sense and that feeling. And so even without actually seeing the different culture, you can kind of feel where the real important thing here is the juxtaposition between big town mentality to small town mentality,
It's
and
small
how
town. Absolutely.
and how like and how irrelevant some money can be when you can get better, like more important things, like a new love interest, um, a family that welcomes you on Christmas, that makes you food, that takes care of
Yep.
you, keeps you warm,
Just a sense of community.
saves you from an accident. Like that's way more important, way more valuable than the money in the entire film, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely got that sort of. It gives you that sort of feeling, and I think it's worth watching in that sense as a holiday film. It would be something that you could just put on in the background as you're serving, little dishes, like you're just having like a little get together with people. You have this movie in the background as it's playing. Occasionally
Hmm.
pay attention to it. It wouldn't be something that necessarily I would rewatch by myself, um, and just really focus on it the way we did for this podcast. But um, it had its moments, like I said, and I really I
It
like I
did. Yeah.
really and I really enjoyed the mom, the Edna Furpo character, and she was very funny and fearless, and yeah.
I mean, I would be
The
remiss to not mention the three-legged dog
Okay,
that made an
yeah,
appearance in the dog. I do have a little bit of trivia on that.
Hmm.
The apparently the dog was the movie was actually filmed in Elora, Ontario. So they were actually
That's funny. That was filmed in Ontario. It did feel like Ontario. Yeah, that's interesting.
right,
Yeah.
but yeah, the owner and the dog were actually just watching as bystanders, and yeah, the dog got picked to just appear in the movie.
Oh, okay. So you just happened to be there, and they're like, "Yeah, why not? We'll put a
Happened to
three-legged
be there.
dog." And I like
Exactly.
that because they there was some reactions that were pretty realistic from the FBI agent who's just like, "Wait a second, was that a three? Did we do
Is
that?"
that us? Did we do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Because they were kind of like, "Oh, I hope we didn't shoot that dog because that's not
And
a good
again,
look for us."
that's a great moment in the movie where like
Hmm.
very 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 funny. But it was unfortunate that it was inconsistent,
Yeah,
because it really did have its moments, but
yeah.
I feel like it was the inconsistency that kind of
Yeah, again,
made
the other
you
interesting part was the part where they get away with the horse and sleigh. I thought that was really fun. Um, it's just again, it was just in a weird way the film didn't belong, but it had its moments where it could have been something. It could have been something that would have been remembered as a very popular holiday film because it had such very like specific niche moments. For example, again, there was the bank robbery where out of all the things that could go wrong, we don't have the guy who actually has the key to the vault. Oh no.
exactly.
Okay, well, now we have to go across the street, and then he has to bring everybody back from from the diner because he can't leave anybody there because they might call the police, which Dave points out. So it's like you have this like really interesting interaction between, and again, there's these little moments that were really good and really comical. Like, probably we didn't need to see the scene where they were in prison and then they showed us the two gangsters and that they were like upset. The whole B plot could have probably not necessarily, it didn't necessarily need to be in there. But I guess they needed to give an out to the Furpos. Like they had to give them like a and somehow get the mom to end up in the town, right? So the only way they could
Mhm.
do that is pull her in by having these guys kidnap her and bring her into the town. But it would have been
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
interesting if they had maybe avoided that B plot and then just kind of focused on just the town and the brothers. And they got broken down. They were trying to get out of the town, and then they got broken down, and then they ended up back in town. And then he changed his mind and then decided to give the money back. That would have been enough. The movie wouldn't have been as long, and it would have felt a little bit more all wrapped up into one like nice little story. And the other little B plot that was kind of weird was the two the two deputies, right? Like they came out of nowhere that owned the like little gun shop, or I guess like they own the local shop, and the two deputies that were like chasing him around and then trying not to tell the FBI about it because they were hoping to steal the money for themselves. Like that whole B
Mhm.
plot also was kind of like, why did they have to have greedy people? Like, I guess to show like there's also again greedy people everywhere. Like it doesn't always necessarily have to be people from a big city. But I don't know. I feel like that was just unnecessary, to be honest. Like the deputies was, yeah, because even in the end, they really didn't get much. Like they didn't use them as an excuse or anything. There was no like, let's arrest the deputies. They kind of got away with it. Their crime, which is basically trying to steal the money for
Mhm.
themselves. So, yeah,
Right.
so it's like, yeah, I don't know if they necessarily needed that. And again, it isn't something that we mentioned at all in the summary because it just didn't stick out as a very important part of the story, to be honest.
No, exactly. It kind of seemed like an afterthought.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like yeah, like I said, enjoyed the film. It was kind of cool. Had its moments, but again, if you're gonna watch this after we talked about it, just be very aware that Dana Carvey is not going to be as funny as you're used to seeing him be. Um,
Not at all.
no, I mean he tried his darndest, but it was just not the Dana Carvey that we know. And maybe we'll do that in the future. Maybe we'll bring we'll do Wayne's World because that's a '92 feature film, and we'll talk about something a little more interesting with him as an actor.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
That would be, yeah.
So, any
Classic.
other last thoughts about this film?
Um, no, not
I
really.
guess. Oh, you know what? I did want to mention also. They at one point they steal a boat. like like again, there's like these look weird,
Oh yeah.
like. And they end up in the river, and it's like, oh no, they have to save. That's when they had to like get him out of the water and then save him from being cold. Yeah, there was like a lot of like little goofy moments, and I think those are like the fun moments of, like I said, comparable to Home Alone. It's like, having a brand of like people who are robbers, but not the ones that always get away with it, the ones that kind of always get caught. And I think that was what they were going with these characters, and I think that's what it ended up playing out.
I think you're
uh
right. I think that's
yeah,
exactly what that was.
yeah, it's supposed to be like, some people are really villainous, plot planning. They are cruel and intentional, and they want to steal money for themselves. And then there's others who are stealing money because they need it, because they have to, because they can't survive otherwise, or
Hmm.
they don't want to have to like live the same boring, existential life that they have. So they go into stealing and going in and out of jail constantly, and I think that's where these guys kind of fall into at the end. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was fun. Like I said, I did enjoy some of it, but maybe it's not for everyone. And again, if you're just looking for like who's the pretty attractive girl in the story, that yeah, they had Machen, and she's a gorgeous actress, and I remember her from back in the day. So
Hmm.
there you go. So that's something worth looking forward if you're going to watch this film. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll get you to come back for the next one, where we're going to be talking about what were we going to. I think the next movie we're going to jump into is the uh, Incredible Journey. No, what was it called? Uh,
Homeward Bound.
Homeward Bound. Yes, the Incredible Journey. Yes. Yeah. So we'll get to talk a little bit more about voice acting. And I mean, again, we could have touched on it here with Dana Carvey, but I think he's quite he is normally quite the voice actor. But
Yes.
in this particular case, it wasn't the greatest voice. But next
No.
film will definitely get more into voice acting, because we're going to be talking about something where that's really all the film is about. So,
Hmm.
all right, yeah. So see you then.
All right.
Gimme that in the city cheer. Jump around in my whip, itty bitty, looking pretty chill. Put my shades on, you ain't even seen it yet. Man, I'm so fresh, and you know I'm always spelling cheer. Give me what you want, what you got, cause I never get enough. You ask me how I want it, and you say you want a chance on me. Chances are you don't know how to do this shit respectfully. I say it like it rough, cause I need a man protecting me. I ain't say this shit for later. I said, baby, come and get it. Feels taking over if you let him. I'ma take the paper, I'ma roll it up, and later he might do what he wanted, cause I let him. Give me something that I'm never gonna forget, because baby, I'm the only one you gotta impress. I won't take any more, and I won't take any less. I'm the queen in this, you know I got the finesse. Give me that, give me that, give me that. Give me that feeling. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Like when we were young.
bring it back, yeah, just bring it back. Sitting in the back, yeah, I'm rolling up some Trinidad. Feeling like the bestest, always got the best shits. Come on, round, baby, yeah, you knowin' who the best is. And that's just for the record, so y'all don't get it twisted. I ain't talking teasy, but no one buzzing, listen. You don't wanna miss it when you get the feeling. It'll make you real explicit like a new addiction, baby, it'll take a hold. I know you're feeling cold, cause I've been feeling cool. You give me all these feelings that I used to have in school. These butterflies got me feeling light, like I'm floating through the air, hanging out like a satellite. Yeah, it's really got me feeling right. All around me, yeah, looking like a ceiling light. Hanging out where the heather glows. See me from the center of the earth with no telescope.